Alright, Dave here, and welcome back to my tutorials. Alright, so today we're going to talk about making thumbnails for your YouTube videos. We're going to talk about not just how to do it, but some of the design principles involved. So what we're working with here is a program called Graphic for Mac. It's by Picta. And it's really good, very powerful. It's a vector graphics editor, so you can put stuff together very quickly. And you can find them at graphic.com. And it's they've got a trial version, and it's pretty inexpensive. And they've got it for iPad and iPhones as well. Okay, so let's start a new graphic. Now the first thing we want to do is we have to decide on the size. Now when you're dealing with making thumbnails for videos, we've got some standard video resolutions to consider. The standard HD is 1280 by 720, and HD 1K is 1920 by 1080. That's like the older 1080p televisions. And for HD 2K, we've got 3840 by 2160. And for Ultra HD or 4K, that's 4096 by 2160. Now in our case, we're going to go with 1920 by 1080. So we do that here, 1920 by 1080, and I like to use the grid, and that way it helps me lay stuff out. So we're going to choose that. Now if I want to use a keyboard shortcut to zoom the canvas to the actual working area, I use Command 0. Now you may want to lay out some guidelines, and there's a couple of ways you can do it. First, you can go over here to one of your rulers, and you can click and drag a guideline out to where you want it. But it can be pretty finicky to get it placed just so. So I'm going to actually take this away by dragging it back to the ruler, and then I'm going to right click on the ruler and select New Guide, and then I can put in the actual position I want. So we're going to go 0. Alright, and then I'm going to do another one, and I'm going to go 1920. Oh, got to click in the little window here. 1920. And then up here for my horizontal guides on this ruler, and we're going to go 0 after I click in the little box. And we'll do it again, and that's going to be 1080. Alright, now we've got some guides to work with. Now over on the right we've got layers. Now if you're not familiar with layers, it allows you to keep things separate and grouped, and it makes it easier to keep groups of stuff together on top of each other, and you can move them around, you can make them invisible, and it's a more advanced tool, but it's common to most more advanced graphic editing packages. So we're going to make a couple of layers here, and if we just double click right on the description of the layer, we can actually turn it into whatever name we want. So I'm going to call this one background. Let's call this one, no, we'll just call it box. And we'll call this one headline. And we're just going to call this one text. Alright, so the first thing we want to do, we're actually going to leave the background for now so that we can use the grid lines. If we put something over top of it, it will hide the grid lines. So the first thing I want to do is draw a box to go around my headline. Now you can draw a regular square cornered box by clicking on this rectangle over here, or right next to it is a little round cornered box. Now if you pick the round corner box, if you go up to the top, there are some extra features that you can play with. So if I want just a little bit of a curve on the corners, I'm going to go and I'm going to move this slider down to, say, 15 points. Then when I draw my box, and you'll notice up here in this little area in the upper left corner, you've got an X and Y as well as width and height. So you can look at those to help you get a good placement here. And now we're going to be using this box for our headline or title, just to give it some extra punch. And there we've got nice corners on the box. And then we're going to pick our move tool or our selector tool. And now over here on the right, I'm just going to show you quickly how to turn these different things off and on and what they do. So I'm going to turn all this stuff. So we've got layers here now only, and this is our appearance inspector. Or I can get rid of that, and I can use the canvas or properties, canvas properties. This is where you can change the width or height of your canvas. You can change your scale from pixels to, oh, here it is. And you can change your background color. Now in this case, since I'm going to be doing this thumbnail for my healing channel, I'm going to pick a nice kind of a soft blue color. Now we're going to actually put something over top of that background later. Otherwise, when we go to export it as a PNG or a JPEG graphic, we'll wind up with all these little grid lines. And since we don't want that, the way around that is to put a box on top of the background layer. Now the other thing you can do with this, in addition to your canvas settings, is you can adjust your grid lines. You can set your spacing and how many subdivisions and your margins and a few other little options, and you can snap to grid. And I don't usually use that. If I need to locate something or a few somethings, I will set up another grid line. The snapping to grid works fine, but I find when I'm trying to move stuff around in small increments, it makes life difficult for me, so I just tend not to use it. But you got to use whatever works for you. You know, try it and play with it and see how you like it. Now here's an area where you can do some path editing, but that's a more advanced concept. We won't be getting into that. And this is for arranging items within a layer. So you can move items to the front, to the back, up a level, backward a level. You can group them, you can separate them, you can align them. And if there's only one object and you choose an align option, with only one object selected, then it's going to align it to the page. And these little buttons here, this is so you can flip something horizontally or flip it vertically over here. And then here we can adjust an object's position, both in X and Y, as well as your width and your height if you want to make it exact. And you can also, using shear angles, you can make some funky looking shapes, and you can also rotate them here as well. And we'll turn that off. And here's a symbol library, and it's they've got a few symbols that come with it. They've got some pre-built ones that will help you out with a few things. And then you can make your own, which is what I've got here. And then this is some more advanced features for painting objects, and it'll work for text as well. And just one quick little thing, if you wind up having a few of these open, it can get kind of cluttered, and sometimes you can run out of room for things that you're working with. So you can actually, in some cases, you can adjust how much room an area has, which can be helpful. But I tend just to keep them turned off, except for the one that I'm actually working with. So now on the appearance or properties section, I tend to work with the effects layer, but you've got one specifically for text, which we'll get into in a little bit, and tags and coloring, brushes, and lines for doing strokes and stuff like that. But it can actually all be done within this little area here, and I just find it easier to use this. So now I'm going to adjust the fill, and one of the principles when we're working with thumbnails is we need to use very large color contrast to grab people's attention, because that's what's going to get them to notice that video and click on it. So you need something to really take their eye to it. So we're going to go with a dark blue for this particular one. Now you can also adjust, something I like to do, down here you have the alpha layer, and that basically is adjusting whether it's see-through or not, and you can adjust just how see-through it is. So if you have objects underneath, you can partially see them through it if you want to, but in this case we're going to leave it at 100%. Okay, now we want to put a line around the outside, so if I just click on the word stroke, it'll open up a little sub menu here. And I want a little bit more room to work with, so I'm going to pull this layer section down, and we're going to set a width of 4. That's usually a pretty good one if you're working with a contrasting color. And I want it to go to the outside of the box, but you do have a choice between having it centered on the outer rim of your object or on the inside, but I like to use the outside, just a personal preference. And you have a bunch of different blend modes, but that's more advanced concepts, and that will be for another tutorial, so we're just going to leave it as normal for now. Alright, now we want to pick a color here, something again that's going to be a good contrast. So I think I'm going to go with a bright green. I know it's not a very pretty color combination, but it is going to be eye-catching. And looking at the stroke on an image this large, it's probably not going to be wide enough, so we're going to make it a little wider. So we just slide it with the bar until we get it kind of where we want. Now it doesn't stand out a lot right now, but we're going to add a drop shadow here in a second, so let's leave this at 10. Now you've also got a choice. You can use the little drop down here to the right of the number and choose from some pre-made choices. Okay, now we click on stroke again and it collapses that. Now we're going to check mark the drop shadow and we're going to make some changes here. Now in the back in the day we used to always use the same horizontal and vertical values, but nowadays it's kind of standard practice to have the shadow going a little further down than it does to the side. So I'm actually going to make that a 6. And then we can change our blur so it makes it a softer shadow. And I think I actually want to make that a little bit more. So I'm going to go 10 and let's try 12. And I'm going to make it a little bit softer. Okay, now that looks pretty good. Now, all right. Now we're going to go to our headline layer down here, and we're going to go over and select some text. Now you can just either click on the screen, or you can actually draw a box in where you want your text to go. So in my case, I'm going to draw a box. Tutorial. And create thumbnail. Now we want to go back over here to the selector tool or move tool, and then I can go to my text tab on this appearance grouping, and here is where I can change the fonts if I so desire. Now I like this particular font, so I'm going to keep that. And here you can change, sometimes you'll have options of going between regular and bold italic and that kind of thing. You can set up your alignment and the size. Here you can either type in the size directly or pick from the drop list. And you can also, in the case of multiple lines of text, you can change the vertical spacing between the lines, which we'll do that in the next section here. You can also change the spacing of the letters themselves. So if I wanted to crowd them up on top of each other almost, I can just change these numbers here. So you can crowd them right together. Now, for our purposes, we're not going to do that. Matter of fact, I want to use outlines on the letters, so I'm going to increase the spacing to give us a little more room to do that. Oop. We went a little far there. Actually, I'm going to go over here and adjust the width so it'll fit. Sometimes you got to mess around with this stuff to get it to all fit in there. So when I'm done making the adjustments I want, I go back over here to my effects section, and we can change the text color, which will make since we're working with a bright green on the border, let's make bright green text. And then I'm going to turn on stroke. And we'll find a line thickness that looks good. I think I like the 8-point. And let's try, oh, and we also again want to make this on the outside so it's not eating up the actual letter. And then I think we will play with some colors here. So we'll try, yeah, no, that doesn't work. Let's try something that'll really stand out against that green. Let's go with a bright green outline, and then we're going to change the text color to compensate. So we're going to make this text color like a bright let's try something like that. You know what? I might just actually let's try this. Let's try making that a bright red. Now I'm going to go back here to the stroke, and I'm actually going to narrow that line down a little bit. It's just a little too much. I think that looks a little better. Alright, on to the next. So we're going to go down here to our text layer, and I'm actually going to make a new layer here, and I'm going to call it text box. Now I can take that layer, and if I grab it to the left of the little box there, I can grab that layer and I can pull it underneath the text one. You see that little blue line that's moving up and down? That tells you where it's going to go. Alright. Now just I was telling you before how you could take layers and make them invisible temporarily to work on stuff maybe underneath it. So these little eyes on the right, that's what does that for you. So if I want to turn that headline off, I can just turn it off and right back on. Okay, so let's make a box for our text. And I'm going to do the same type of a curved box. And we're going to pretty much fill the rest of the area. And don't think we want to use that as the main color for the box. It's probably just a little too much. So I'll go back to my move tool or selector tool. Now, if we don't want to have to go set everything individually, I'm going to show you a little trick. We're going to go back down to our layers, and we're going to go to the box layer, and then I'm going to select this box, and then I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go copy style. Now I'm going to go back to my text box layer, and I'm going to select that box, and then I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to go paste style, and boom, we've duplicated our little box on the top. And we can do the same with any other object as well. So now we're going to go back, move our layer up a little bit, and we're going to go to the text layer, and we're going to layer text in. So I'm going to draw another box in here. So now we're going to type in the full description of this tutorial. How to create thumbnails for YouTube. Oops. Sorry folks, I have dyslexia and sometimes it makes me do silly things. For YouTube videos and design. Oh, dyslexia. And design considerations. And tips and tricks. Oops. Okay. Now, you don't have to, of course, use the same font as you use for your headline. So we're going to change this font to something else. But we want to choose something that still has a high impact. So we're going to go back into our appearance tool block here and choose the text. And we're going to look at some different ideas here. So I'm just going to scroll up to the top and work down the list until I see something that kind of catches my eye. Now, as a rule of thumb, if you're putting quite a few different areas of text in, it's a general design rule not to use more than 2 or maybe 3 fonts at the most. Otherwise, it can't help but start to look cluttered. But quite often it's good to have a contrast of style between your headline and the actual text body. So we're just going to go down and pick something, maybe something that has a little bit of a kind of a designer feel to it, but still has an impact. So let's try one that I've always kind of liked, and it's just a personal preference, is marker felt. It still has impact, but it's got a kind of a nice, almost freehand design look to it. And then I'm going to go in here and I'm going to increase the text size, just so we can fill the space. And let's try actually increasing our letter spacing, or sorry, our line spacing a little bit. Oh, that might have been a little too much, but we'll see if we can tweak it a little bit to make it all fit. Yeah, there it is. All right. Now sometimes I don't like the way it lays out the text like this, so we might go in and play with the actual text spacing. If we can tighten it up, maybe we can get it on 3 lines instead of having one word by itself on 4. So let's just tighten it up a little bit. There we go. I think I like that a little better. And I think I'm going to increase the line spacing a little bit more so it fills the space better. And then we're going to adjust this down so it's a little better centered in here. And adjust this box size here. Oh, a little too much. Alright, now as a starting point, I think I'm going to take the text, copy the style from our headline. So I'm just going to, so we'll select that and then we'll right click and we'll copy style. And then back to our text in the box, we'll select that, right click and paste style. Alright. Well, it put it back on 4 lines on us. And even changed our font. Sorry folks, I forgot about that. You know, I don't think I like anything about that. So we're going to use the Command Z to back up a step or undo. And we're just going to set it manually here. So I'm going to go back to our Effects tab here. And I think we're going to try a nice light blue for the text. And then we're going to set our stroke, open that up, probably go for the same size stroke as before, and let's play with some colors and see what works for us here. Ooh, no, don't think I like that one. We could try darkening that a bit. No. So let's try our yellow maybe. No, don't think I like that either. Okay, you know what, I think maybe we'll just leave it a dark. Maybe we'll go a little, we'll try for the lighter blue here actually, and then we'll make it a little thicker. And I also want to put it on the outside. And let's see here. Now we're not going to notice it. It looks like there's nothing there right now because it's the same color as the background until we add our drop shadow. Okay, so let's try a 3-point horizontal and a 5-point vertical. And we'll increase the blur a little bit, soften it. Now in this case I want to maybe look at doing an inner shadow just to see what kind of an effect that gives us. Alright, let's try a 2-point horizontal and a 4-point vertical. Make the text look like it's sunk in a little bit. And I'm going to reduce the size just to give it a slight effect. And then just to see the difference, we'll turn that check mark off and on. You know what? It doesn't really seem to be doing a lot. I think we're just working with the wrong color here for the stroke. So let's change this color to something else. Just for giggles, let's try. No. Okay. I think we're going to try something a little different. We're going to get rid of the stroke. And I think instead of stroke, we're going going to experiment with an outer glow. Let's see what that does for us. Now the thing with the glow feature is we need to go into the color, and it comes with an automatic pre-adjustment of 75% on the transparency, or alpha. So I think I want to make it a little brighter of a color, and we're going to actually reduce the transparency a bit, or increase the solidity, say 90%. That gives us a little stronger of an effect. And we'll reduce the size a bit and drop it down to 7. So that gives us a kind of an interesting effect. I think I'm going to stick with that, and I'm going to get rid of the inner shadow. Actually, that looked kind of cool. Okay, I'll put that back in. Alright. Still not sure how I feel about the color combination here. I think I want to go and change the color on the background of that box. And this is the nature of doing this kind of design. You just have to play with things back and forth until you get it the way you want it. So now that I've selected my box layer and selected the box, we're going to go up here to the fill, and let's try a little experiment here, and may try that with the red after all. And then we'll go back to our text layer. We're going to change our main text color. Okay. And let's try setting that back to our basic blue. Okay. And I think we're going to play with that texture, that box again a little bit. Change this to a more kind of an orangey color. Remember, this isn't so much about best color combinations as it is about choosing colors that draw the eye. Alright, so we'll go back to our text, and let's play with that color a little bit more here. We'll, no, don't like that. Maybe we'll darken it a bit more. Yeah, that's actually not too bad. And now we want to change our, being that the color is so dark, we're going to dump the inner shadow. And I think we're going to dump that outer glow and go back to a stroke. That stroke is a little thick for this, so we're going to drop it down to, let's try a 4. That looks a little better. And I'm not liking that pink a whole lot, so let's try a red, more traditional red color. Okay, Now I think we got to go back and play with that text color a little more. Go a little brighter, maybe a little lighter shade of blue. Right up to a cyan maybe. Well, let's actually try for something maybe similar to the background, just a little lighter. And then we'll increase that. We'll increase the stroke size to give a little bit more of a separation. And then I think we'll add a little bit more size to our drop shadow just to make it stand out a little more. So we're going to go a 5 and a 7. Now let's actually reduce the blur a little bit. Yeah. And I think I'm going to go back to the text and just brighten that yellow a little bit more. Yeah, I think I can work with that. Alright, so I think that is going to do it for the design part of it. Now we just are maybe going to do a little bit of alignment. So what we can do is if we go down to the layers, we can actually select multiple layers. So I'm going to take the text box layer, and then I'm going to hold my command key down, and I'm going to click on the other layers I want. So we're going to take the text box, headline, and box layers, and then I'm going to shut off the appearance toolkit and turn on the properties toolkit, and then pick the alignment tab. Now that we have those layers selected, we need to use our selector tool here and draw a box around all of these and select them all, and then go up to our vertical centers tool. They're all centered to each other, but we want to center to the page here a bit. I don't think it looks quite centered to me. So while they're all selected, if you actually just use the arrow keys, you can fine tune it a bit. And if you hold the shift key down and move the arrow key, it moves it in larger increments. So you can see it moves it a big chunk all at once there. Now I think we're just about where we want it. Vertically it looks pretty good. Now I need to go in here and just click once out here to deselect everything. And then I want to take this text down here, and now normally you could select the box and use the alignment tool, but what I find is it's aligning to the outer box around the text rather than where the text actually is. So I find it's better just to do these types of things by eye. Until we get it just where we want it. And I think that's pretty close right there. Let's deselect. See how that looks? Yeah, I think that's going to work. Alright, so now we want to save it. So you can go Command S to save it. So, thumbnail. I'll just call it design, I guess. Now, I said at the beginning that I was actually making this for my healing channel, and then I completely forgot about that. There's one other thing we need to do. We're going to go back over to layers and select the background layer by itself. And I need to put a background in here to hide all those grid lines. So we're going to use a straight, sharp-cornered rectangle. And if I get anywhere near those guidelines, it's going to make it exactly to those guidelines. So we're going to go up to File, and we're going to select Open Recent and open one of my last thumbnail ones. Okay, and this time I'm going to show you how to take an existing thumbnail that I've created, and we're going to make a copy and then change it for my next tutorial. So we're just going to go up here to File and select Save As, and we'll just pick a new name. And we're going to call this one Design Thumbnails. Okay. So now I can just take my different layers here, and now actually I made a bit of a mistake on this last thumbnail, so I'm going to fix that one. On this one I'm going to make a new layer and take that layer and we're going to drag it down underneath the other one so that it's going to be on the bottom, and we're going to call this background. Right, and on that layer I'm going to make a box. Use Command 0 to give us a little working room here, so it's a zoom out to the canvas. And that's going to hide all those grid lines. Alright. Now I'm going to select my text layer here in the bottom box and choose my selection or remove tool. Pick my text and then pick the text tool over here and go in here and change this. Design a thumbnail for YouTube videos. Normally this would be one word, but I don't want to interfere with my little Fuzzee D brand puzzle piece there. So we're going to actually make this 2 words. Alright, go back to our selector tool, and that's it. We can hit Command S to save it, and then we're going to go up to File and Export. And I like to use PNG just as a general rule. It's a nice clean compact format. If you use transparencies, it allows you to preserve those, and it provides a nicer final product than the GIF format does. Now in this case you've got some choices of having all the objects, selected objects, or entire canvas. Now I like to use entire canvas so I don't miss anything, but if you're going to have a transparency on the back of it, then you need to choose the all objects instead. Now for pixels per inch, you want to leave it at 72 pixels per inch. If you don't, it'll actually change the width and height. And 72 is an industry standard for stuff that's going to be viewed on screen. If you were going to print this out, then you might want something up around 600 pixels per inch. Or if you're really doing it as professional printing, then you're going to want to output it as, say, 1200 pixels per inch. But for our purposes, 72 is what we want. And the file name is fine, the location's fine, so we'll just save that. And that's it for this tutorial on how to just change an existing one when you're continuing a series like I'm doing. So if you like these videos, these tutorials, please remember to subscribe and to get notified when new ones come out. Make sure you click that notification bell. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.